Good day guys, welcome to my JavaScript course. In today's class, we are going to be looking at function and object. In our last class, we treated arrays and also the structuring of arrays. We also treated for off loop, and I hope you haven't forgotten them. So in this class, and this is week 7 of our front-end web development training. So we are going to create another folder. We are going to call it week 7. Week 7 class 1. So by next week we'll be done with our JavaScript course. So I'm going to delete everything that I have here. All right. All right. So we're going to make this flex direction to be column. So let's see what we are good. Let's make the paragraph. Let's make the paragraph font size. A font size of 30%. So, JavaScript course from beginners level, object and function and object literals. So that is our focus for today's class. Then tomorrow we are going to look at DOM, document object model, where we can be working with the interface of the browser. All right, so let's proceed. What is function? What is function? What is function? Here, function are one of the fundamental building blocks in JavaScript. A function in JavaScript is similar to a procedure, which means a set of statements that performs a task or calculates a value. It also means a block of code that performs a specific task. I got this definition from MDN. So a JavaScript function is similar to a procedure, a set of statements that performs a particular task or calculates a value. It is a block of code that performs a specific task. So that is the meaning of function. Let's say, for example, you want to calculate two numbers and get the sum of the two numbers. You can use a function for that, because the function wants to perform a task, or the function wants to perform a task of calculating the sum of two numbers together. So do you get that? So there are other aspects of function that we are going to be looking at today. Function is part of JavaScript data type. It's under the non-primitive data type, classified as an object. Function is considered a first-class citizen because in JavaScript, because function can be passed as a value, function can be passed as a parameter, can be passed as a property, function can be passed into another function and can also be returned from another function. And function can also be called or invoked. So let us look at the different types of function that we have. We have a lot of function. We have different types of function. We have the inbuilt function, and one of the inbuilt function is prompt, and we've looked at prompt. These are functions that are provided for us by JavaScript. We have the alert function, we have the confirm function. We also have other functions in form of method that are being provided to us by JavaScript. So we have lots and lots of inbuilt function, and we also have custom functions. That one are created by the developer. So we are going to look at different types of function: inbuilt function, constructor function, callback function, iother function, function declaration, function expression, arrow function, immediately invoked function. We have a lot of functions. So we are going to be looking at three types of function, which are function declaration, function expression, and arrow function. So let us go straight to the point. To define a function, you need the function keyword. To define a function, you need the function word keyword. So in this case, let's say for example, I just want a function that will console.log my name. Are you with me? I just want a function that will console.log my name. So for function declaration, this is how the syntax is. First of all, you need the function keyword, which is this. Then the name of the function. Now, the name of the function is like a variable name. And in our previous class, I said that to name your variable, your variable has to be descriptive to the kind of data that is being that we are storing into it. So in the case of function declaration or function, we have to give it a name that depicts or that expressly shows what we want to do. So let's say in this case now, I want to let's say I want to print my name. So I can say print name, for example. Now, this is the function keyword. Then this is the function name, which is called print name. Then a parenthesis or an enclosed bracket, a parenthesis, then afterwards a square bracket, a curly bracket. So this is what function declaration. Function declaration consists of a function keyword, the name of the function, then other things like the parentheses and the curly bracket. Then let's say in this case, I want to console.log. I just want to store console.log Joshua. This is what I want, console.log Joshua. Now, let us go to our console in our developer tool, and let us see what we have. Let's see what we have. So now here, there's nothing in this console. There's nothing in this console panel. But what we did is we console the log Joshua, and we are not seeing it in the console. The reason is because we have to what? Call or invoke the function. We have to call or invoke the function. So after you have defined the function, then you have to now what? Call the function. It's as simple as that. After you have defined the function, then you what? Call the function. So how do we call the function? You call the function by its name. Are you with me? You call the function by its function name. So what's the function name in this case? It is called what? Print name. So say print name, then the parentheses like this. So it means that this function has been what? Been called. So as a result of that, whatever that we have inside of the function body is going to be displayed. So in this case now, we say console.log Joshua, and this is what we have here. Do you get it now? So for function declaration, we define function declaration with a function keyword, then the name of the function, and of course parentheses and curly bracket. Then inside of the curly bracket, whatever thing that you want to, whatever code that you want to pass into it, you pass into it depending on the kind of thing that you want to do. Then afterwards, you call the function print name. You call the function print name. Then whatever that you have inside of the function body is what that's going to be what executed. Do you get it now? So let us analyze this. This is a very simple function declaration. Notice that we did not pass any parameters nor pass any argument in this case, and we're going to look at that now. So, but before we look at that, I want to show you something. Yeah, this is what I want to show you. The function anatomy. The anatomy of function, or I don't know which English to use now. So this is what we have. This is the function keyword. Can you see the dot, the arrow? This is the function keyword. This is the name of the function, sum. What are you doing? You are trying to sum two numbers together. Then x, comma y, they are the parameter list, and we're going to look at that now. And you now have inside of the curly bracket, you have let x equals x plus y, return x. So this is the function body. So the function body, whatever you have inside of the curly bracket, is the function body. That is what will be executed. Then we have the return keyword as well. Then we call the function. So this is a function call. We call the function by the function name. In parentheses, then we pass the real value, that is the argument value of the parentheses. So this is what it means. This is how function works. So let us look at it in practical. So in this case, let's say instead of just consoling Joshua manually, I can do it dynamically, whereby I can pass a parameter here and pass the value of that parameter as an argument when I call the function. Please take note. So in this case, because what I'm doing here, console.log Joshua, is just manual. It's not dynamic. So whenever I call the function, even though I call the function multiple times, and mind you, you can call a function more than once. So if I call this multiple times, what you are going to have is Joshua, Joshua, Joshua. But I want something that when I call the function multiple times, I want to call the function with different value name. And I'm going to have that name, the different names on my console. So for us to do that dynamically, we have to pass what a parameter and also an argument. So this is how to do it. This is how to do it. I'm just going to comment this. And I'm going to write another one. I'll say function, then print name. Now pass a parameter called name, and I will say console.log name. Then I will call the function with the actual name. So let's say Joshua. Are you with me? So now this is what it means. So now let me explain. Now what we have here, this is called parameter, and here this is called what? Argument. This is called argument. So let us look at it and let's see what it simply means. What is a function parameter and what is a function argument? When a value is passed when declaring a function, it is called what? Parameter. Please take note. They say when a value is passed when declaring a function, it is called parameter. So while we're declaring this function, the function name, the function keyword, and the function name, we're passing what? A value. So this is called what? A parameter. Then let's look at argument. When the function is called, the value passed is called what? Argument. So when we call the function, which is print name, the value that we pass into the parentheses is called what? Argument. So please take note. When we are declaring the function, the value that we pass into the parentheses is called parameter. When the function is being called, the value that we pass into the function when it is being called is called what? Argument. So let's take this example first. Let's say this example. We want to multiply this number, this parameter. I want to multiply it by itself. So say return num times num, then multiply. So we'll call this multiply function with a value of 2. So now look at it, says in this example, the num variable is called the function parameter. So this num here is called what? The function parameter. It is declared in the bracket enclosed list of the function's definition. In the function definition. Then the number 2 is the function's argument. This one. It is the value that is actually passed to the function in the function call. So when you call the function, the value that you pass into it is called argument. It says the argument value can be accessed inside of the function body through the corresponding parameter name. So for me to be able to access this argument value in this function body, I can only access that through the corresponding parameter name. So this parameter name is like a placeholder of the real value, which is the argument. So that is what it means. So now in this case, when I say print name, then I pass in the argument, which is the actual value. Then this name that we have here in the function definition is like a placeholder of this argument, of this value. It's like the placeholder or the variable of this value. So when we console.log name, what is going to come out is what? Joshua. Did I say that? Can you say it? What we are going to have is what? Joshua. So I can call this function with different name. I can call this function with another name like Adekunle. I call this with Ilebaye. You get it now? Can duplicate again. Can call this Cynthia. If I save, look at what we have. Can you see Joshua, Adekunle, Ilebaye, and what? Cynthia. Why do we have that? It is because this name now is serving as a variable of this argument value. So whatever argument I pass in when I call the function, that is what is going to be consoled. So I call the function how many times? 4 times with different argument value, and that is what we have here. So can you see? Very, very simple. So that is parameter and argument. So I can do another one. Let's say function and multiply, or let's say sum, for example, sum. Now I want to sum two numbers together. So let's say x and what? Y. And I do something like const, or yes, let's do const. Now say z equals to the result of x plus what? Y. So then we console the log z. Then we call the sum function with two values. Let's say we call it with 5 and what? 7, and we save. And let's see what we have. And you see we have what? 12. We have 12. Why? We have x and y as what? The parameter. Then inside of the function body, we have const z equals x plus y. What we are trying to say is we are trying to assign the sum of x and y to what? Z. They want to console the log what? Z. Then this is what we are going to get. We are going to get 12. So we call the function with an argument value of what? 5 and what? 7. It's as simple as that. Very simple. So you can see how dynamic we can make. Can you see how dynamic it is to be able to use parameters and what? Argument? Because if you have to do this now, I can call this function now with different argument value. I can call this function with different argument value. So that is that. Then the next thing I want to show you is the return keyword. The return keyword. Mind you, we are still in function declaration. We still have other functions like function expression and arrow function. But I want to do everything in function declaration, then we can replicate it in other function types. Alright, so what is return? It's what we call the return statement in JavaScript. So JavaScript return statement is used to return a particular value from the function. It is used to return a particular value from the function. So let's say in this case, let me just comment this now. Let's say in this case, I want to return z like this. I want to return z. Now, what's the definition? It says return statement is used to return a particular value from the function. So what are we returning? We are returning a value of x plus y. We are returning the sum of x plus y that is assigned to z. So we are returning that value. So we say return z. So that's the value that we are returning. And the next is the function will stop the execution when return statement is called and return a specific value. Now, let's take it one after the other. First of all, return is used to return a value from the function. And once you use the return keyword, the function is going to stop executing, or is going to stop its execution. Meaning that once you return a value from a function, the function will stop executing. It will stop executing. So whatever value that you return, that is what you can be able to use. Or maybe you want to display it in your browser, or you want to use it in another function. So do you get it now? So we return z. So it means that this function has been terminated the moment the function returns the value of z. And also you need to know that you need to know that the return statement should be the last statement of the function, because the code after the return statement won't be accessible. Won't be what? Accessible. So whenever you are using a return statement, like I said return returns a value from a function, and it stops the function from execution after it has returns a value. Then the return statement should be the last statement in your function code. On your function body should be the last statement, because any other code after the return statement will not be accessible. Now let us see something. Let us duplicate this and bring this down here, and I'll comment it. Let's save. After the return statement has returned a value, it will stop executing. Now we said console.log z. Let us see what we have here. We cannot see z. We cannot see the value of z. The reason why we cannot see the value of z is because when the return statement returns a particular value from the function will stop the execution when the return statement is called and return a specific value. So any statement that is after the return statement will not be accessible. That is why the return statement should be the last statement of the function. So do you get it now? So in this case, this function will stop execution when the return statement has been called and it has returned a value. So any other code that is after the return will not be accessible or even recognized. So it is advisable to always put your code, any code that you want to any other code that you want to display should be before the return statement. It's very important. So we console.log z after we return z. Now we can't see the value. But if it's actually before the return statement and we save, we are going to see the value. Can you see 12? Because when the function is running, it hasn't gotten to what? Return z. So the moment it goes to return the return statement, the function is going to call the return statement and is going to terminate the function or stop the execution of the function. Then any other thing that is after the function will not be executed. So it's very, very, very important. So now we have 12, because the console.log comes before the function statement. So that's that. But now that we've removed the console, or we've commented the console, but how can we get the value in our console? Quite alright, the return statement has returned a value from the function and the function has stopped its execution. Then how can we get the return value from the function? We should be able to get the return value from the function and display it in our console. In order for us to be able to do that, we can do it like this in two ways. We can either console.log the function call. We can console.log the function call, meaning that we can console.log the function call. As we call the function, we can call the function inside of this console.log. So as a result of that, we'll be able to see what the result. Do you get it now? So what it simply means is we call the function with the array argument. So the function, the return value is now passed in this console.log. So that's why we can be able to see it here. Or in another way, we can do something like this. We can say, all right, we can save the called function into, or store the called function into a variable. So we can say const, let's say num1, say num1 equals, num1 equals sum 5 and 7. So now this is what it means here. When we call the function and pass in the argument value, then we save it inside of num1. So the returned value has been stored inside of num1. So what can we do? We just say console.log num1. It's as simple as that. Can you see? We still have 12. Very simple. So now in this case, when you are using return statement in a function and you want to console.log, or you want to get that return statement in your console, what you can do is either you do this method or you use this method. It's as simple as that. So alright, now that we've talked about parameters, arguments, return statements, so now let us look at other functions and let us replicate what we have here in other functions. So function expression. So in function expression, which is quite different from function declaration. Now for function expression, you have to store an anonymous function to a variable. What is an anonymous function? An anonymous function is a function that has no name. For example, for function declaration, the function declaration has a name. Now in this one here, the function declaration has a name that is called print name. In this one here, the function declaration has a name that is called sum. But for function expression, you are assigning an anonymous function to a variable, and this is how it works. So let's say, for example, we want let's say we want to replicate what we have here. This function print name. Let us replicate it. So I'm going to call this print name, then express. You cannot declare the name. You cannot use print name again because we have already declared it here. So just say print name express to show that okay, this is an express, just for formality's sake. So print name express. So let's do it like this. So we know that this is an express function. Then we'll now say the function keyword. After was curly brackets and this a parenthesis and a curly bracket. So this is what we have. Can you see? Very simple. So now this function has no name. So this is what we call anonymous function. So you are assigning an anonymous function to a function expression. Do you get it now? You assign anonymous function to a variable. So that expression is called function expression. Assigning an anonymous function, that means function without a name, to a variable, that is called function expression. So now in this case, we are going to console.log Joshua. And what we are going to do, we are going to call this function print name express like this, and let us see what we have. Let me console.log something here. Let's say function expression, or let me do okay. Let's do console.log function expression. Alright, so let's see what we have. So function expression, we have Joshua. So this is it here. So I can also comment this and pass in a parameter and an argument, just like the way we have it here. So in this case, I'm going to have const print name express equals an anonymous function, and we pass in what? The name parameter. Now we say console.log name. So we are going to call the function with different print name with different arguments. different arguments. So I'm going to call this John. I'll duplicate. I'm going to call this Blessing. Duplicate. I'm going to call this Omomi. So let's save. So let's see what we have here. Can you see John, Blessing, Omomi? Fantastic. So for this one too, we are going to replicate. What is it? We are going to replicate this return statement and all that using function expressions. I'm just going to copy this. Once you understand one function, you should be able to do the other function. You only just to know the syntax of that function. So yeah, instead of having sum like this, I'm going to have a const. I'm going to call it sum express equals this. So yeah, I'm going to say num1 express let's make it like this. Num1 express, then we'll call this sum express. So I can give it a different value of 19 and 8. So we can say num express. So we save. So now this is what we have. Can you see 27? Fantastic. 27. Interesting. So that is that. Then the next function I want to show you is the arrow function. So let's look at arrow function. So I'm going to duplicate what I have here, copy what I have here, and paste it here. So here is going to be arrow function. So let us look at the syntax for arrow function. So here in this case, let's say I'm going to call this const print name arrow, then equals. So for arrow function, you don't need the function keyword. All you just have to do is just the parentheses, then is equals sign and a greater than. So this is what makes it what an arrow function. So an arrow function is quite different from function declaration and function expression. The reason is because for arrow function, we don't have what the function keyword. The function keyword has been substituted with the arrow that we have here, this arrow symbol that we have here. So this is it. And we're also going to look at other advantage of arrow functions, such as implicit return. Other functions like function declaration and function expression don't do implicit return. So you have to explicitly specify what the return statement. So in this case, this is how arrow function works. This is how it works. No function keyword. This is just how it is. It's just a little bit different from function expression, because function expression is assigning an anonymous function to a variable. So this one too, we are assigning this to a variable, but in this case, there's no word function keyword. So let us proceed. So we console the log. Let's say we console the log JavaScript. Console the log JavaScript, and we say, well, let's call this print programming language. So let's say print programming language, then we'll call it with print programming language, then we'll call it like this. This is what we have. Can you see JavaScript? But let's say in the case whereby we want to pass in parameters and argument to make it dynamic, in the sense that we can call the function with different programming language. So I'm just going to comment this, and I'm going to do it here again. I'll say print programming language equals, I'll just say language like this, lang, this. Here I'm going to, okay, let me just, okay, console.log lang. I'm going to call print programming language with different value. So I can call this Javascript. I can call this React JS. Call this React Native. Call this Node.js. So save. Let's see what we have. Can you see JavaScript, React JS, React Native, and what? Node.js. So as I call the function multiple times, I call it with different what? I call it with different value. Called it with different value. It's as simple as this. Very, very, very simple. Very simple. So let's proceed. Let's see. I hope you understand it, and if you don't really understand it, you can go over the video. You can go over and watch the video over and over again. You can watch the video over and over again until you have 100% understanding of the function. So there's nothing strange here. There's nothing actually strange here. Function is actually used to perform a specific task, and I told you that we have different type of function. So we have function declaration. So you define the function by the function keyword and the name of the function. So it has to be descriptive to the kind of data that you want to pass into the function body, or the kind of code that you want to execute in the function body. So, and you call the function. So you can call a function without passing an argument, and you can declare a function without passing or you can define or declare a function without passing a parameter, just like the way we have it here. You can define the function without passing a parameter, and you can call a function without passing what? An argument. You can just leave it plain and just do whatever you want to do inside of the function body. So once you call the code, or once you call the function, whatever you have inside of the code will be what? Executed. Do you get it now? And also you can create a function or define a function that has a parameter and also what? An argument value for the parameter. And that is what we have here. And also for the return statement, which might sound or which might look very difficult to understand at first. The return statement is different from console. Console is an inbuilt function that actually helps us to be able to see what we are doing in our console, in the developer tool, in our browser. So whatever browser you are using, whether Chrome or whatever, there's a console panel there. So once you do console.log, whatever thing is going to be shown there. But the thing is, when you are building a real life project, you don't need to use console.log, because all the things that we are going to be displaying will be displayed in the user interface of the browser. So that is where we need return statement. So return statement is used to return a value from a function. So it returns a value from a function, and the function will stop execution when the return statement is what? Called, and when the return statement returns a value. So do you get it now? And also the return statement should be the last statement in the function body, because any statement or any code that is after the return statement will not be accessible by the function. The reason is because once the return statement is called, the function will stop executing. Then any other thing after the function will not be recognized or what? Accessible. So do you get it now? So it's as simple as I've explained it. Then we now replicated what we have in our console, in our function declaration. We replicated it with different function type, such as function expression. And I said function expression is assigning an anonymous function to a variable. So an anonymous function is a function that has no name. So an arrow function too as well. So let us look at other advantages, or the advantage that arrow function has over function expression and function declaration, which is implicit return. Which is implicit return. So implicit return can only be used without curly bracket. Implicit return can only be used without what? Curly bracket. So as soon as you use curly bracket, you must include a return statement in the function body, unless you want to return undefined. So this is what it means here, that implicit return can only be used outside of the curly bracket or without the curly bracket. So, and yes, I didn't tell you that returning the return statement is used to return a value. So the value can be anything. It can either be a primitive data type, a primitive value such as boolean, number, string, or even an object type value such as function, object, array. So we can return anything from the function. We can return a boolean value, we can return a number value, we can return a string value, or we can even return a object type value such as function, object, array. So please take note of that. So back to our implicit return. So implicit return can only be used without the curly bracket. So let us see. Let's say, for example, if what we want to return is just one line of code, like in this case now, let us enhance it. Let us enhance arrow function with implicit return. So in this case, I'm going to duplicate what we have here and paste it here. I'm going to comment this. So here, so in this case, okay, let's leave it. Let me copy this. I don't want to do it with this example here. So let's say we have const, let's say total equals, let's pass in three values, A, B, and C, and then this, and say return let's do something like average of ABC, A times B times C divided by 3. So let's call this average. So we say average, for the average with different values, let's say 5, 13, and 7. So we can save this inside of a variable and call const average value. So console.log average value. To save, let's see what we have. So we have 51 and 51.666666. So now this is what we have, but we can use an implicit return. Implicit return has to be without what the curly bracket. So implicit return simply means automatic return. We don't have to specify what, or we don't have to manually specify the return statement or write the return statement in our code. That is why it is called implicit return. So JavaScript does the return for us automatically. So it has to be without what, a curly bracket, and it has to be a one-line code. If it is more than a one-line code, you have to put the code inside of a function body, which is using a curly bracket. Please take note of that. It's very important. You only use implicit return when you want to return just one line of code. So you don't pass that one line of code in the curly bracket, because if you put it in the curly bracket, you have to now specify it explicitly. That's manually. Specify the return statement. It's very important, because you might watch some tutorials and you might see implicit return and be wondering why. So you only use implicit return when you want to return one line of code in arrow function. So in this case now, what we are returning is just this one line of code. So what we are going to do, we are going to enhance it using what they call it, implicit return. So I'm going to duplicate this now. I'm going to duplicate this. Let me comment this. And let me write it again. Const AB equals A, B, and C. Then the arrow. Then I don't need the curly bracket. All I just have to just copy this and paste it here. So this is it. This is an implicit return without what, a curly bracket. So this will return implicitly for me, and this is what we are going to have. Can you see? So I can call this function multiple times. It's very, very important. Okay, all right. So I think that is that. And also one thing I want to let you know is that you can call a function. Let's say, for example, the difference between function declaration, function expression, and arrow function is that you can call a function declaration before its initialization, meaning before you define it. Let's say in this case, are you with me? We have function print name console.log name. This is what we have, right? We can, let me just comment two of this. Let me comment these three. So what I've been showing you so far is, first of all, you have to define the function. After defining the function, then you call the function. But the advantage that function declaration has over these functions, other functions like function expression and arrow function, is that you can call the function even before you initialize the function. So let's say in this case, let me call this out of here. Now I'm paste it here. So can you see that I am calling this function even before I created this function? So, and we are still not going to have what, error. Can you see? We are still having Joshua. Line 13. If you come here and check line 13, can you see? Line 13, console.log. So I am calling this function even before I declared it. It's very simple. Can you see it? Interesting. So, but for function expression and function and arrow function, it will give you error. And this is the error that is going to give you. Let me comment this one. So now I want to try to call this function before I what do you call it now? before I initialize the function or define the function. Look at what it's going to give me. Can you see? Cannot access print name express before initialization, meaning that they cannot access this value before you define it. So you have to define it first before you now call the function, which is different in function declaration. So do you get it? So I'm just going to bring it back here. Save. Also for function, for arrow function, I'm going to comment all of this, and I'm going to take this one up. Take it up. So let's see if we are going to get the same thing. Can you see? Cannot access print programming language before initialization. So that is what I want to show you. Alright, so let's save. Interesting. So that's that about function. So you have to be very careful. And there's one thing I also want to show you before we call it a wrap. For function is you can use the return value from a function in another function. You can use the return value from a function in another function. Let's say, for example, let me think of an example now. Let me think of an example. Okay, let's say, for example, you have a function that multiplies two numbers together. I want to return the value of the multiplied number. You want to return it and use it in another function. Can you see? And use it in another function. So in this case, one function is dependent on the value of another function. So you may want to ask me, when should I use function expression? When should I use arrow function and function declaration? The thing is, there's nothing like when or how to use it. When should I use it in anything? You can use any function for anything, and it will still give you the same result. But one of the things that you need to note is that for function declaration, you can access the value. You can call the function even before you initialize it. But for other functions, you cannot call the function even before you initialize it, because it's going to give you error. Cannot access so function before initialization. So you have to be very careful. So if, for example, function 2 is dependent on the value of function 1. Let's say function 2 is dependent on the value of function 1. So what you are going to do, you are going to put it in order. So you are going to, first of all, write your function 1 code. Then under the function 1 code, then you have function 2. If you are using probably arrow function or function expression, because function 2 needs the value from function 1. So, and if you are using function expression or arrow function, you have to write function 1 before function 2, because function 2 needs the value in function 1. So you get it now. But if you say you want to, first of all, write function 2 before function 1, that means you have error if you are using function expression or arrow function, because you cannot access the value from function 1 in function 2 if function 2 is coming first before function 1. So you have to use function declaration for that. So let us look at this. Let's say you want let's use function expression now. So let's call this function, let's say fun1. Let's say I want to pass let's say I want to pass two values. So say num, let's say num1, num2. I want to multiply them. So say return num1 times num2. So this is what I want. So I'm now going to call this function inside of function 2. That's func2. So what I want to do in func2, I just want to console the log. Let me just say I don't want to pass any value. I don't need a parameter. All I just want is to say console the log, or let me just do something like this. Let me do let output be equals to, and do something like the value of multiplying two numbers is, so do something like plus, and we can call the function. You can say func1, can call it with, let's say 2.5 and 15. Save, and we console the log output. So we call function 2. Let's see what we have. See, the value of multiplying two numbers is 37.5. Can you see how simple it is? Now this is it here. Function 2 needs the value from function 1. Function 2 needs a value, the return value of function 1 in function 2. So in function 2, we don't want to pass any parameter nor any argument. We just want to have what function 1 return. We want to have it inside of function 2. That's all. So just say let output be equal to the value of multiplying two numbers is then plus this function here. You know, there's a way we can substitute for this, in the sense that instead of concatenating these two expressions, these two values with plus, we can use what backtick. If you remember, we can use backtick. So instead of just calling this function direct, I can also save this function inside of a variable here. I can say let value be equals to func1. Let me just cut this. Equals to this. So instead of putting it here, I can just say plus what value. It's as simple as that, and it will give me the same thing. Can you see? It will give me the same thing. Very simple. Or instead of doing it like this, I can just use a backtick. I already taught you that. I can use a backtick. So I can just do something like this. Value. Very simple. And let's see what we have. Can you see 37.5? Alright, so that's that. So notice that we are using function declaration. And what if now function 2 needs a value from function 2 needs a value from function 1. So now in this case, even though I call this now and I paste it here, even though I start with function 2 first before calling function 1, I start with function 2 first before initializing function 1, and I've already called function 1 inside of function 2 before I declared it, it will still what? Can you see? It will still work. It will what? It will work. But I can't try that for other functions. So let me duplicate this, for example. Let me copy and comment this and duplicate it here. Instead of having this here, I can just call this, cut this and make it an anonymous function and save it here. Const. Now you see what I'm talking about now. Also this one too. Cut it. Let's make it an anonymous function. Const. Now let's save. Look at what we have. Cannot access func1 before initialization at func2. So why is it so? Because we have declared what? We want to use the value of func1 instead of func2. So it means that we are trying to access the value that has been returned, that is returned from func1 even before we initialize it. So it's going to give you error. So do you see? So you have to put it in order if you are using function, expression, or arrow function. So you have to, so function 2 has to come before what? Has to come after function 1. So like this now, you are not going to have what? Any error. So the same thing too applies to what? Arrow function. So it is very, 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 very important. So please take note of that. So now let us look at, for example, let us look at some. I want to look at the sum of number an array. So let's say, for example, you have something like this: const array equals 23, 60, 72, 18, and 19. Let's say you have this. Are you with me? Let's say you have this and you want to sum them together. You want to sum these values together. You want to sum them together so that you can have one single value. It is simple. It is simple. Very, very simple. And this is it. First of all, you have to loop over the array. Or first of all, you have to declare a sum variable, or how am I going to put it? First of all, you have to declare an accumulator. Accumulator with a value of 0. Then secondly, you loop over the array. And thirdly, you add every element of the array. You add every element of the array with the value of the accumulator. See? So this is how it works. For example, in this case now, we want to sum the value of two numbers. We want to sum the value of what? We want to sum the value of the numbers that is inside of this array. What is wrong with me? It's like I'm dizzy. We want to sum the value of the numbers that is inside of this array. And to do that, first of all, we have to declare an accumulator with a value of 0. So to do that, we can say let accumulator ACC equals what? Is 0. You get it now? Let accumulator equals to 0. Because as you look over the array, you want to add each element of the array or each number in the array, you want to add them to what? To the accumulator. So, and I don't think looping over an array is something that is difficult for you because we have treated that in our previous classes. So, let accumulator ACC be equals to what? Is 0. Then, secondly, we have to loop over what? The array. So, we can say, we can use for loop or we can also use what? For off loop. Are you with me? We can use for loop and we can also use for off loop. So I'm going to show you how to use for loop and how to use for off loop in this case. So I'm going to say for loop, let I be equals to what? Is 0. Because we want to loop over the array and the index of the first element of the array is 0. So we are starting from the first element. So the index will be 0. Then we'll say I should be less than array dot length. This one shouldn't be new to you again. Then we can say I plus plus 1 to increase it. So we'll now do something like this. We'll say accumulator equals accumulator plus array at position what? I. Then we'll now what? Coming. Then we'll console the log. We console the log ACC. If we save this now, let's see what we have. We have 148. Now let me explain this. Very simple. We say let the accumulator have an initial value of what? Is 0. So we are saying the accumulator should have an initial value of 0. Then we loop over the array to be able to get the individual elements of the array. So what we now do, the reason why we used let ACC equals to 0 is because we are going to use it inside of the for loop. Notice that we did not declare the accumulator inside of the for loop, because if we have done that, it's going to loop over the accumulator as well, because as the loop is running, are you with me? As the loop is looping with different value, so also the accumulator will also be running to different in the sense that, look at what I'm talking about. If I cut this now and I paste it here, for example, what it simply means is this: as this loop runs once, as we loop over this array with different value, so in the first loop, it's going to loop over this array. It's going to get 23. As it loops first, this accumulator is going to loop. Then let's pass this console here too. So as it loops first, this accumulator will also run, and it will console the log 0. As it loops the second time, it's going to run the second time. As it loops the third time, this accumulator is going to run the third time. As it loops fourth time, it's going to run the fourth time. As it loops the fifth time, which is the last, it's going to loop the fifth time. So if we save it now, look at what we have. It's looping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's not what we want. So do you get it now? That is not what we want at all. We don't want this. Can you see what we have here? We don't want it. So you just loop, you're just getting the numbers for us. So this is what we are going to do. So rather we have to what? Declare the accumulator outside of the for loop. We declare the accumulator outside of the for loop, and this is what we are going to get. And when we want to console the log the ACC, we don't console the log it in the for loop, because if you console the log it in the for loop, it's going to run 5 times 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you see? Rather, we have to do it like this. We console the log it outside of the for loop, because we declared the accumulator outside of the for loop. We will console the log this outside of the for loop. So this is what we have. Very simple. And let me explain this particular one here. I don't think this one is strange to you, because we have done that in our beginning class in JavaScript. I said ACC here is actually the variable. Why this ACC is the value of this ACC, which is 0. So we are saying ACC equals is 0 plus every number that this loop gets from the array. That is what we are adding to this. So the initial value of ACC is 0 plus the first loop. The value of the first loop is 23. So it's 0 plus 23 is what? 23. So once it loops again, the accumulator, the initial value of the accumulator now is no longer a 0. It's now what? 23. So once it loops again, it loops with what? 16. So we are saying 23 plus 16 is going to add it up again. So the accumulator initial value will no longer be 23. It will now be what? 39. So it will keep looping and adding the various elements of the array to the initial value of what? The accumulator. So do you get it now? It is very, very simple. So that is how it works. That is how it works. So in this case, let me explain it again so that you can be able to have a full comprehension of it. First of all, you declare what? An accumulator. The accumulator has a value of 0. If you declare the accumulator with different value, let's say 5 or 6, that's going to be the initial value of the accumulator. So the sum of all this number plus the value of the accumulator, that is what you are going to get. So in order for us to be able to get the actual sum of these numbers in this array, we have to set the accumulator to what? The value of what is 0, and it has to be declared outside of the for loop. So this is what we have here. So this ACC can be anything. It can be sum, it can be total, it can be anything. So I'm just making it descriptive. So I would say let accumulator ACC equals to what is 0. Then we'll now say we loop over the array. Then we'll say ACC, which is the variable, equals to ACC, which is the value, plus array in every iteration. So do you know that this is also similar to ACC plus or equals what? Array in position what? I. If you remember in our beginning class when I was explaining assignment operator, I explained this. So this one shouldn't be new to you. So if you don't understand this, go back to the beginning, the first video, the first class that we had on JavaScript. So please go and watch it. So what this simply means is this. Let me explain this here. It means this. The initial value of the accumulator is what? Is 0. So plus, once this loops, once we use the loop on the array, it loops with what? The initial value of what? It loops with 23. So say 23. So that is equals to what? That is equals to 23. So the accumulator now has the value of 23. Now, once it loops again, when it loops again, it gets to what? 16. So accumulator now will now be equals to 23, not 0 again now, plus what? 16, which is equals to 39. So the list goes on and on. So now if it loops again to 72, the initial value of the accumulator now will no longer be 23. It will now be what? 39. So we are saying 39 plus what? 72. So that is how it goes on and on and on and on and on until we get what? The final answer. Then we'll console the log the ACC outside of what? The for loop. Because why? We declared it outside of the for loop. So we have to console the log outside of what? For loop. So this is what we have. 296. Very simple. So in this case, we can also use what they call it. We can use for off loop to achieve that. can use for off loop to achieve this. So let's see it together. So for off loop, I can do for let num of what array. Then we can do something like acc plus or equals what num to remember. Then if you save, still the same thing, 148. Why am I getting different value? 148 and also 200 and okay, just hold on for me. But in this case, I'm getting 296. Why? Okay, oh my bad. I have it 2 times here. I have it twice here, so I'm supposed to duplicate this to save. Alright. I get. So alright, so yeah, so I have 148 now. So I use the before loop. But what if I want to what if I want to also get the sum of, let's say I want to have another array with different number and I want to get the sum. Now this is where function comes in. This is where function comes in. From our definition, which states that function is similar to what? Procedure, a set of statements that performs a task or calculates a value. It is a block of code that performs a specific task. So this is what it means. Let's say in this case now we want to use a different array. I want to get the sum of the values or the numbers that is inside of the array. So what are we going to do? So now we are going to have to write another for loop and declare another accumulator. Do you get it now? To be able to get the sum of the numbers that is inside of another array. Instead of doing that, why don't we put everything inside of what? A function. And let's say this particular function performs this task. It loops over an array, or it receives an array as argument. Then in the function body, it loops over the array and gets the sum of the array. So to do that, we can enhance this. We can enhance the sum, and can enhance the sum by putting it a function. So to do this, we can say something like const. We can use any function. Alright, so we are going to call this function. Let's call it total. Hope I've not declared total here. Or let's just call it array sum, or let's say sum of array num. Yes, I like this function. Sum of array num then equals, I'm going to use an arrow function, then I'm going to pass in an array, then this. So I'm going to call this sum of array num, I'm going to call it with an array. So let's call this, I can call it with this, I can call it with array and say arr, or I can just pass a value. I I'll just pass this array into it. Let me just copy and pass it here. You can pass this here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to initialize an accumulator, copy and I paste it here. And please mind you, this variable here is a local variable and this one here is a global variable. So this one here is a local variable. It is local to this function. It is local to this function. While this one is a global variable, meaning that it can be accessed anywhere in the code in this environment. So now we are going to use this for loop here. I want to use this one here. I will copy and paste it here. So instead of using let num of array. So this one here, this array is this one that we have here. So I think that's also. I'm just going to return. I don't want to console. I'm going to return ACC. So yeah, I'm going to save this now. It's a const. Let's save this with some 1. I'm going to duplicate this multiple times. I'm going to say some 2, some 3, and some 4. So I can give this a different value. I can say 6, 5, 16. Can do this 72, 34, 12, 65. Then this 90, 105, 26. Let's say 8. So if you save this and we console the log some 1 and some 2. Want to console the log all of the results, some 3 and some 4. We save now. Let's see what we have. Can you see 148, 27, 183 and 229? Can you see how simple it is? So now this is now a function. So we pass all of this inside of a function. Can you see sum of array number? We pass it inside of what? A function. So now we can call the function with different array values. So it's as simple as that. So we have come to the end of function for now. When we move to object, we are still going to look at other functions and cover function in a much later time. But also bear in mind that we are going to be ending our JavaScript class by next week, Wednesday. So please take notes. So alright, let us look at objects. Let us look at object literal. So what is object literal? So let us see it together. But before that, let us look at benefits of using a function. Function makes the code reusable, meaning that you can use the code over and over again, just like the way I explained the other time here. If you want to add the sum of an array, you have to write a new array, declare a new accumulator, then write another for loop. But just with this function, you can reuse the code as many times as you want. So it makes our code reusable. You can declare it once and use it multiple times. Can you see it? Then function makes the program easier, as each small task is divided into a function. And function increases readability. It increases readability. So it's very important. So now let's look at object literal. What is JavaScript object literal? JavaScript object literal is a data type used to define objects in JavaScript. I repeat, JavaScript object literal is a data type used to define objects in JavaScript. It is a syntax for creating an object in JavaScript. That is, it is a syntax for creating an object in JavaScript that is composed of a key value pair or a property value pair. Let me write that. The key value pairs or property value pair. Value pairs. So it is a lightweight and efficient way to write and to create and store data. It is a great way to store related data in an organized manner. So that is the function of object literal, which is composed of a key value pair or a property value pair. It is an efficient way to create and store data, and it is also a great way to store related data in an organized manner. So object literals are one of the most commonly used data structures in JavaScript. They are used to store collections of data and can be used to represent complex data structure such as objects, arrays, functions, and even regular expression. So object literals are also used to store information about a particular instance of an object, such as a state or behavior. Object literals are written in the form of a key value pair or a property value pair, where each key is a string and each value can be any valid JavaScript data type. Now, for example, let's say you want to store an information about a dog. You want to store the name of a dog. You want to store the color of the dog. And you want to store the age of the dog. Initially, if you want to do that using primitive data type, you have to assign the name to a name variable and the color of the dog to a color variable and the age of the dog to an age variable, such as this. Let name, or we can say const, let name be equals to Duke and let color be equals to brown and let age be equals to 5. Can you see that these data here, they are related? These data are what? Related. From the definition or from the explanation of object literal, it says that it is a great way to store related data in an organized manner. So see that this is what? A related data. The name, the color, and the age. So in this case now, we are getting, this is the data about a dog. So instead of having it like this, we can store it. We can store this data inside of an object literal. We can store the data inside of what? An object literal. It is very, very important. We can store it inside of an object literal. And let us see how we can do that. First of all, we are going to name the object, and the name of the object will be descriptive or will describe the kind of related data that we are storing inside of the object. So in this case, we want to get this data that we have here, the name, color, and age is actually referring to a dog. So we are going to call the object literal dog. So we're going to say const dog equals, then we want the curly bracket. So in the curly bracket, then we'll say name, then Duke. Can you see? Name Duke. So what this simply means is this name here is referring to what? The property or the key. While the Duke is referring to what? The value of the key or the property, which is name. Then you can see the syntax, the property, a double colon, then the value of the property, or the key, a double colon, and the value of what? The key. Then if you want to have more than one key value pair, then you have to separate it with what? A comma at the end of the value of the property name. So can you see? Duke, comma, then you have color to be what? Brown. Then age. Now, and I do something like 5. Notice that I'm having error here. This spaghetti code, you can see this underline wavy line under age, and you can see that in my code here, you can in the headline, the script.js1, you can see that there's an error that is telling us one error. So the reason is because I did not add the comma. I'm supposed to add comma, because if I don't add comma, it's going to give me error. I cannot go ahead to write another property value pair if I do not end the previous property value pair with what? A comma. So I have to end it with what? A comma. So please take note of that. So this is it, very simple. So I don't need this anymore. So how can I access the property inside of this object? How can I access the property inside of the object? There are 3 ways to access the property inside of an object. Number 1 is using the dot notation. Number 2 is using the bracket notation. And number 3 is using what they call it now. Number 3 is using object destructuring. So 3 ways of accessing the property of an object. Number 1 is dot notation, accessing the property of an object using a dot notation. Then number 2 is using a bracket notation, and number 3 is what? Destructuring the object. So let us look at each of them let us look at these 3 ways one after the other. You know, I already explained destructuring to you in our previous class. So please, if you don't understand destructuring in array, please go and get the concept of destructuring before we move to object destructuring. So let us look at accessing property of an object. I'm going to look at 1 dot notation. So this is it here. Let's say, for example, you want to get the value of the property name from the dog object literal. You want to get the value of the property name from the dog object literal. To do that, you can just do something like this. Dog dot. So it's going to bring out all the properties that we have in the object literal dog. In the dog object literal, you can see we have age, we have color, and we have name. So let's say I'm interested in the name. That's it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to console.log it. I'm going to console.log something like this. So you can also store arrays inside of an object literal, and also functions and inside of an object literal, and a regular expression to inside of an object literal. It's not just limited to primitive data type. You can also store not primitive data type to like functions and array. And you can even have object literal inside of an object literal. So please, it's very, very important. So now we want to get the value of the name property in the dog object literal. So to do that, we have to what? First of all, get the name of the object literal, which is what? Dog, then dot. So when we use dot, it's going to bring out all the properties that is inside of what? Dog notation. That is inside of the dog object literal. And I think this dot shouldn't be new to you because we have been using dot all the time, like console.log. So it means that console is a very robust object, meaning that we have lots of properties that is tied to what? To the word console. So with this now, you begin to have an idea that all the dots that we have been using before, now, like the console.log, it means that console is an object and log is part of the property that is inside of what? Console. We have console.log, we have console.error, we have console.table, we have console.directory, we have a lot. Do you get it now? So .log the log is just part of the properties of the console object, and for us to be able to access the log property in the console object, we need what? The dot notation. So also in arrays too, we did something like the array name dot length. So array comes with a lot of methods. So array is a very robust object that comes with a lot of methods. So for us to be able to access those methods and the inbuilt method of array, we have to use what? Dot. So do you get it now? So we have dot pop, shift, so all those things like that. So you understand that this dot is a way of accessing property from an object. So if we save this now and we come here, you can see Duke. You have been able to get what? The value of the name property that is inside of dog object literal. So I can duplicate this. I can make this color. I can make this age. So let's go. We are Duke Brown and 5. So now this dot notation that is used to access properties of the dog object. The dot notation can be used, or how am I going to put it? You can only access the value of a property that is inside of an object with dot. Because if you use dot with a property that is not in the object, it's going to give you what? Undefined. Let's say nationality. Look at what we are going to get. Undefined, meaning that this nationality property is not defined in the what? In the property. So let's say we have something like this. We have const, or let's say I can either use const to let property equals color, for instance. Oh, okay. Let property equals color, for instance. Coming so the log. Okay. I get what I'm doing now. So let's say let property equals color, and now if I duplicate this and I do something like property and I save, it's still going to give me what? Undefined. Because why? It's giving me undefined because all of these property I'm trying to access, they do not belong to the dog property. They don't belong to what? To the dog what property. So now let us look at the bracket, sorry, the square and still bracket. Let me just make it explicit. The square bracket notation. It is quite different from the dot bracket notation. So what we are going to do is this. So we need the dog, that's the name of that's the entry to the properties of the dog object. So we have to select the dog, then the square bracket. This is square bracket. Then in this case, we want to be able to get the properties that is inside of dog. So we don't pass in name like this. It's going to give us what? Error. Are you with me? Because if you save now, look at what it's going to give us. Undefined. So what we are going to do is, when you are using a square bracket, to please take note, please, you see this one, listen attentively. When you are using a square bracket to access the property of an object, ensure that you put the property of that object inside of what? A quote. So you can do it like this. It can either be a single quote or a what? A double quote. So the moment I added the quote, can you see what is bringing to us? It's giving us all the elements, all the properties that is inside of this dog object. So I can say name, can duplicate this now, say dog, age, and then see it. Let me start color, then age, save. Let me just console the log something there. Let me say bracket mutation. So let's save. Let's see what we have. Can you see? Duke, brown, and got 5. So you might want to ask, when should I use dot notation and when should I use bracket notation? Now you can use it to access properties of an object, but the advantage that bracket notation has over dot notation is that you can pass in an expression into the bracket notation. Let's say in this case now, we have let property equals to what? Color. Now color is a value that belongs to the string data type that is attached to, that is stored in what? This property property variable. So now if I console the log now, if I console the log dog square bracket property, what we are trying to do is we are trying to access the value property. Now notice that I did not put this inside of what? A quote. You only use quote on properties or properties that is inside of an object. Like in this case, name, color, age. They are properties or keys of this object. So if you want to access them in using square bracket notation, you have to put them inside of what? A quote. But in this case, this property does not belong to this property variable. It's not part of the properties in the dog object. So if you want to pass it into the square bracket, you don't put it inside of what? A quote. You are passing it as a variable. So what you are doing invariably is you are passing the value of what? This property. So this now makes it dynamic to be able to select the value that is inside of what? This, to be able to select the property that is inside of this dog property. Now this is what it means here. We said let property be equals to color, and we know that color is a property of dog, and for us to be able to access color in the dog property, we have to put it inside of a quote like this. So can you see that this one here is the same thing as this one? The dog property, let me just check. Dog square bracket color is the same thing, that's equals to, is still the same thing as dog square bracket property. Why? Because if you remember when I was explaining string backtick, that I can use backtick for string interpolation. Like you can pass in an expression and a variable, and what you are going to get is the value of the variable. So it is still the same thing like this. You can pass in an expression or a variable. Now in this case, now the value of the variable is what? Color. So what you are going to have here is dog color, not the property name. Sorry, not the variable. So you are saying dog property, it will still give you what? Brown as the value. Can you see? Brown as the value. So when you are using square bracket notation, you use it to be able to it is used to assess the property of an object dynamically. It is used to assess the property of an object dynamically, and you are going to see the use case in a much later time, maybe probably when we are doing React or so. So that is one. That's that. So let me show you the third one. Just using the structuring, the structuring. So now to the structure is quite simple. From what I explained in our previous class, I said where is it? The structuring is a JavaScript expression that makes it possible to unpack values from array or properties from where object into distinctive variable. So in this case now, let's say I can do const square bracket a curly bracket which represent object. Then I want to unpack the values. Now I want to unpack the property. I can say name, color, and what age, then equals to dog as the object. So now what I'm doing now, I'm unpacking them and putting them separately. So now I can console.log name, duplicate it, name, and what again, color, and what again, then age. This is what we have. Now the reason why we are having this stroke underneath it is because this name here is deprecated, is actually a keyword in JavaScript. So there are certain keywords in JavaScript that you are not allowed to use somehow. So let's see this now. If we save, can you see? Let me put a demarcation. Say the structure. The structuring objects. Properties. So this is it. So let's see what we have. And it's too fast. It's a 2 hours video. So can you see? Refresh. So the structuring object property, bracket notation, and let me also use that for dot notation. Dot notation. So dot notation, bracket notation, square bracket. So that's that. We can also now we destructured the property at a go. We destructured the property and look at what we have. It says it is used to unpack values from an array or unpack properties from what? An object. So we have unpacked all the properties in this object. We have in the dog object, we have put it inside of, we separated it, we've unpacked it. But in this case now, what if we want to give the property maybe a different name aside from the name of the property? Let's say you want to give it a different name. So to give it a different name, it is simple. In the place where you are unpacking the property of the dog object or of any object, you can now specify the name by saying double colon. I want to give this name, let's say dog name, like this, dog name. Then you can change this and say I want to give this color, I want to give it a different name of dog color. Can you see? And this age, I want to give it a different age of dog age. Can you see? If I save now, you will see that you will have error. Color is not defined, blah 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 is not defined. Why? It's because we have already changed the name of the property. So in order for us to access that, we can just do dog. Can you see? Dog name, dog color, and dog what? Age. We save. So look at what we have. So very simple. We have been able to destructure the properties of the array like this. So we can also have nested array, destructure. So we can have nested object too, and we can destructure nested object. But more on that in our next class. So in our next class, we are going to be looking at, we are going to finish or do a finishing touch on today's topic. Then after that, we'll move to document object model, that's DOM manipulation. Then by next week, we will end our JavaScript course or class. Then we'll move to other languages such as React. Please ensure that you watch all the JavaScript videos. In fact, there's going to be like a break after the JavaScript class, a 1 week break after the JavaScript class, so that you can be able to assimilate all the things that you have learned so far. You get it now? Alright, so that's that. So notice we gave this a different name. Instead of the actual name of the property in the object, we have to assign it to a different name, and this is how to do it. Very simple. So I think that's that for today's class. So we meet again tomorrow. Please ensure you watch today's video. Enjoy.